By far the most famous story in the Talmud is where a potential convert comes to Hillel and he asks him to teach him the entire Torah on one foot, to teach him the entire Torah in one sentence. And Hillel says to him that what you hate to be done to you, don't do unto others. And additionally, our sages tell us that the reason why the Jews had to go into exile, the reason why they were forced into exile, the reason why the temple was destroyed, was because of the sin of sinas chinam, the sin of baseless hatred. In other words, they were in exile because they weren't keeping Shabbos, or because they weren't keeping kosher, or because they were overly promiscuous, or because they weren't studying or davening. They were exiled because they hated each other, because they resented each other, because they judged each other. And I'm going to explain to you, why is love so important? Why is love the key to Geula, and why is hatred keeping us here in exile? And the answer lies in an unbelievable, incredible Maamar of the Tzedek, where he discusses and analyzes this story of Hillel and the convert. And he asks one very simple question. He asks, why is it that Hillel spoke to the convert in the negative, what you don't want to be done to you, don't do unto others? Why didn't he say it in the positive? Treat others the way you want to be treated. Love everybody else like you love yourself. And the Tzemach explains that Hillel wasn't just telling the convert that the mitzvah of Ahavas Yisroel, the mitzvah of love, is equivalent to the entire Torah. Rather, he was additionally telling him, what does Ahavas Yisroel even mean, what it means to practice Ahavas Yisroel, and once you understand what Ahavas Yisroel is and what it means to practice it, it will become obvious why it is that Ahavas Yisroel is equivalent to the entire Torah. And the Tzedek says that us humans is a very interesting phenomenon when it comes to us humans, and that is that we know ourselves better than anybody else on the planet. We know ourselves better than strangers know us, better than our friends know us, better than our families know us, better even than our spouses know us. And part of that self-knowledge is that we know our own flaws and shortcomings and unhealthiness and challenges and darkness a lot better than anybody else in the world. And that's actually the things we usually keep most private. And yet, despite all that knowledge, despite knowing our own shortcomings and our own flaws and our own imperfections, that knowledge doesn't really bother us. And we still like ourselves, we still love ourselves, we still go to bed at night and sleep like a baby. We are still our favorite person in the world. And yet, when somebody else points out and calls attention to and criticizes one of our shortcomings and one of our flaws, it makes us very, very uncomfortable. It gets us very, very upset. It gets us very angry. And this is very interesting because we know what they're saying to be true, and they don't even know the half of it. We can elaborate for hours and hours and hours. And when we knew that, it didn't make us upset, it didn't get us angry, it didn't make us uncomfortable. But when somebody else articulates it, suddenly we get so angry at them, we get upset. And the question is why, if we know it to be true, and we can elaborate for hours and hours, they don't even know the half of it, why are we so upset when somebody's stating the obvious, when somebody's stating something we already don't know to be true? And in fact, when somebody says something which is blatantly untrue about us, we don't really care so much. It's specifically when they say stuff that we know to be true, that gets to us, that gets under our skin, that bothers us, that really hits at our ego. And the question is why? And the Tzedek explains that what human ego cannot tolerate above all else is feeling judged and condemned and being written off by somebody else as a bad person. Because we ourselves are attached to ourselves and committed to ourselves no matter what. You can never divorce yourself. And therefore, we have a very strong foundation in our own relationship with ourselves, which is that our starting point and our premise is that we are unconditionally good. We are inherently good, and we love ourselves unconditionally. And when you go into your relationship with yourself built on that premise, so any knowledge you then pick up, any knowledge you learn about yourself, anything you know about yourself, you know that you have this flaw and that problem and that issue that you have to work through, it doesn't bother you because you don't feel judged, you don't feel condemned by yourself because you love yourself infinitely, you love yourself unconditionally. As opposed to when somebody else who doesn't have that foundation, doesn't have that unconditional love towards you, doesn't have that infinite love towards you, when they point out your flaws, when they point out your shortcomings and your problems, it makes you very angry, it makes you very uncomfortable because you feel condemned by that person, you feel judged by that person, you feel like that person is saying you're a bad person. And that our egos cannot tolerate above all else. And therefore, what Hillel was saying to the convert was, he was saying, the thing that you hate to be done to you, the thing which you hate above all else to be done to you, the thing that us humans hate above all else to be done to us, which is for people to judge us and condemn us and basically say that we are inherently bad. He says, do not do that to other people, which means treat everybody else with the same generosity and love that you treat yourself. Extend to everybody else that same generous outlook, extend to everybody else that same infinite love, that same unconditional love as you extend to yourself, in the same way that you love yourself regardless if you're in a really, really good place in life and you're doing everything you're meant to be doing, or you're not a very good person, you're not in a very good place, you still love yourself unconditionally. You still look in the mirror and think this is like an inherently good person who happens to be doing some bad things. This is still an amazing person who happens to be doing some bad things. You have this unconditional love as the foundation and premise and starting point of your relationship with yourself. Extend that same generosity and that same outlook and the same approach to everyone you know, to all Jews and all people that you know. That you love them unconditionally, extend to them unconditional, infinite love, and then you could see the problems without judging them or condemning them. And he said that is the entire Torah. Practicing Ahavas Yisroel in this way is the entire Torah, because the entire Torah is meant to make us Jews into the best, most wholesome, strongest Jews we can be, into the best and most healthy and most wholesome human beings we could be. And if we were keeping every single mitzvah, if we were keeping the entire Torah, which covers every single aspect and every single area of life, we would be the healthiest, most wholesome people and the healthiest, most wholesome Jews. And then we would have an awesome relationship with ourselves, an awesome relationship with everyone around us, an awesome relationship with God. And then Moshiach can come and we'd have the ultimate best relationship. But as long as we are failing to keep all the Torah mitzvahs, as long as we have many shortcomings and challenges and we are not yet perfect, so Hashem says we cannot have Moshiach yet, we cannot have a full, complete, loving relationship, because there's so many issues, there's so many things you're still doing wrong. As opposed to when us Jews practice Ahavas Yisroel, as opposed to when us Jews say that for me to get along with and for me to love my people I meet, or my friends, or my family, or my spouse. So one way to approach all those relationships is to say, if the people are up to par, if the people act like perfect people, then I'll love them. Then I'll treat them with respect. Then I'll treat them with love. But if they have issues and they have shortcomings, then I'll dismiss them and I won't treat them with love. Then I'll criticize them. But when we say no, I'm going to treat everyone else like I treat myself. I'm going to love them unconditionally no matter what. I'm going to extend to them infinite love no matter what. Even if there's problems, even if they're not perfect people, even if they have a lot of issues and shortcomings, I will still love them unconditionally. I will still have Ahavas Yisroel towards them. Then God sees that and God reflects that and mirrors that and says, you know what? Even if the Jewish people are not perfect, even if my partner or my spouse is not perfect, even if the Jewish people have many shortcomings and many flaws, I too will extend that same infinite love, that same unconditional love, and I will love them completely, and we will have the perfect relationship, even if they're not perfect. Even if they have many shortcomings still, many flaws, and then God will take us out of exile and bring Moshiach and bring Gula, and then we can work on the flaws and get rid of them. But when we extend the same unconditional love to people, despite the fact that they're not perfect right now, the same love that we are extending to ourselves, then God will mirror that and reflect that and extend infinite unconditional love towards us, and we will have a perfect relationship with God. We will have Moshiach, even if we're not so perfect in other areas. So Moshiach now, and have a wonderful day.